on tonight, the night before the playoffs start, I wanted to share my bracket with all of you. Now, as a rule of thumb, I don't believe I'm that great with playoff brackets of any sport. I mean, I do okay, but I certainly am not on the level of Jostradamus. So instead of trying to figure out, well, who do I think is going to beat who or any of that, I just decided to leave it all to chance. In this case, the 2023 Stanley Cup Playoff Coin of Destiny, presented by Kyle, aka Son of Jaws. In case some of you haven't found out yet, my dad did create his own bracket league on NHL.com. It's called Flying Fluffy Sports. I submitted my bracket already. He has about a dozen people in it already, and you can join him there as well. So, on this clipboard on several pages that you won't be able to see for yourself until I post the pictures on Twitter, is the results of a coin flipped. Basically, the rules are simple. I take a coin and I flip it to determine the outcome of every single game from every single series. I flip the coin until the series has ended, meaning one side has flipped 4 times. And I had 2 rules to make it fair. One, all the flips had to be the same style of flip. I had to flip it and it landed on my palm. Errant drops to the ground did not count. And number 2, the higher seed or the team with the greater amount of points was always heads, and the other team was always tails. So, for example, in the first matchup, Colorado and Seattle, Colorado was heads and Seattle was tails. Rick, Maryland was pretty awesome. So I started with the Western Conference, and I started flipping. The first series I did was Colorado and Seattle. And surprisingly enough, it predicted that Seattle would win the first game, Colorado would win the second game, then Seattle would win the next 2 games, and that Colorado ultimately managed to take it to 6 games but gets beaten by Seattle. Rick is spamming the chat with penguins. So the coin predicted that Seattle wins in 6 games. It predicted in the Dallas-Minnesota series that Dallas wins the first game, but Minnesota wins the next 2, and then the teams go back and forth until Minnesota beats Dallas in a 7-game series. And then the Vegas-Winnipeg series has Vegas winning the first 3 straight games and ultimately winning in 5 games. I am doing good, Rosado. How are you? And then finally, the Kings versus Oilers. The Kings take the first 2 games, then the Oilers take the next 2, and then finally the Kings take the last 2 to win in 6. So that was the coin's predictions for the first round. These are not my predictions. It's just the prophecy of the coin. So in case you were paying attention, the teams that made it to the second round were Seattle, Minnesota, Vegas, and the Kings. So in the Seattle versus Minnesota series, Minnesota, after losing game 1, wins the next 3 straight games and then proceeds to blow a 3-1 lead against the Kraken by letting the Kraken win the series in 7 games. I'll get to that result once I'm done with the Western Conference. I made it so that I did the whole Western Conference first up until there was a Western Conference champion. Then I did the Eastern Conference all the way up to their champion, and then I picked the Stanley Cup winner with the coin. And then Vegas actually takes the series with the Kings to 6 games and wins. The Kings win the first game, then Vegas wins 2, then the Kings win another 1, and then Vegas wins another 2. So that means the coin predicts that the Western Conference final will be the Seattle Kraken versus the Vegas Golden Knights. And this time, it is Seattle's turn to blow a 3-1 lead by winning games 1, 3, and 4, letting Vegas win game number 2, and then proceeding to lose the last 3 games in which Vegas goes to the Stanley Cup after beating the Kraken in a 7-game series. So now that we have our Western Conference champion according to the prophecy of the coin, it's time to talk about the Eastern Conference. And I'll just get this one out of the way right now. Boston versus Florida. The coin made a hell of a series with this one. Florida wins game 1. Boston wins game 2. We win game 3. Then Boston wins games 4 and 5. Then Florida wins game 6 and forces a game 7 where Boston breaks our hearts by winning game 7. The coin trolled me in real time as I was flipping it. But if you think the coin dealt pain to Florida fans, wait until you hear what it did to Toronto. Yeah, Raven, nice series for you. And I agree, Taunts, bad coin. Maple Leafs fans may want to tune out as the following outcome might be too painful for you to withstand. So in the Toronto versus Tampa series, the coin predicts that Toronto gets out to a 2-0 lead. And then for the one and only time throughout the entire time I was flipping the same coin, Tampa humiliates Toronto by winning the next 4 games straight and humiliating Toronto in a 6-game series. I told you it was painful if you were a Toronto fan. This coin loathes Toronto, I guess, and wants them to suffer. So, and then the Carolina and New York Islanders series. What's up, Sway J? I'm reading the prophecy of the coin over here. Patrick thinks Tampa pulls the reverse sweep over Toronto. Well, to be fair, that's only one extra win for Toronto. So the coin basically, you are less merciful than the coin. Yeesh. So in the Carolina Islanders series, Carolina wins the first game. The Islanders win the next two. Then Carolina wins the next two. And then the Islanders win the next two and beat the Hurricanes in the 7-game series. Coy needs to lay off the Mike's Hard Lemonade. And yeah, the coin was a jerk to the Panthers, and especially to Toronto. You have Toronto in 6. And then finally, the coin predicts for the Devils versus Rangers series that the Rangers take a 2-1 series lead and then proceeds to lose 3 straight to the Devils. And the Devils ultimately win in 6 games and move on to the second round. So the coin predicts. Oh, yeah, Select. That's exactly what the coin said. Devils in 6 in a rather embarrassing fashion for the Rangers because they lose 3 straight to end the series. And then for the second round, the coin predicts in the Boston versus Tampa series, Tampa wins the first 2. Boston wins games 3. Tampa wins game 4. And then Boston manages to tie the series and send it to a game 7 that Tampa wins. So Raven might not like that. The prophecy of the coin says that you're going to lose to Tampa in the second round in 7 games. There's Raven saying, screw this coin. Oh, it gets better. The New York Islanders versus New Jersey Devils series. Islanders win the first 2 games. New Jersey ties the series at 2 apiece. And then inexplicably, the Islanders win the next 2 straight, and the Islanders beat the Devils in 6 games. So, can you imagine? The coin is saying the second round is Boston versus Tampa and Islanders versus Devils, and that Tampa and the Islanders are the teams that make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And Frank says, throw that coin away, Kyle. That's funny. Oh, it gets better. In the Eastern Conference Final, Tampa wins the first 3 games in a row and proceeds to beat the Islanders in 5 games. The Isles can only manage to win game 4. So that means the coin is predicting that the Stanley Cup Finals are going to be between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the coin says Tampa in the Stanley Cup Finals, Tampa wins game 1. Vegas wins game 2. Tampa wins games 3 and 4. Vegas wins game 5. And then in game 6, Tampa wins the goddamn cup. And the coin is saying the 2023 Stanley Cup champions will be the Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously, I really don't care for that prediction